Welcome back to the PLO vlog. I'm Wayne. The people have spoken and I have finally listened. Instead of my usual 300, I'm in for 400. Let's get into it. First thing to note, we look down at King, Jack, Jack 10, single suited in middle position. When it folds to me, I go ahead and open for 20. We get two late position callers plus the small blind. So we're going four ways to a flop. Flop comes Queen, Jack 8, rainbow. When it checks to me, I go ahead and bet 60, and player to my left goes ahead and min raises to 120, and then back to me. So in the moment, I was trying to calculate the numbers. He's most likely going to obviously have the straight, and based on my hand, I'm probably going to be a coin flip, if not a slight favorite. So I thought about pushing, but I just decided to call and evaluate a turn. Turn brings a queen, and I go ahead check, and he snap shoves. And I don't think too long before throwing in a chip to call, and we're going to a river. Before the dealer can even turn over the river card, he says, "You probably have me," and he turns over his hand, Queen 10, 9, 7, so he flops a straight, turns, trips, and we just got to fade some cards here. River brings a 6, and I turn over my hand, and we're doubling up, so we're off to a pretty good start here in the session. So about 4 or 5 hands later, we look down at Ace, Ace, Queen 8, double suited on the button. There's an early position open to 20. There's a caller, and we go ahead and pot it to 85. The original raiser calls, and then the late position player calls. So we're going 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes Jack 10, 6 with 2 diamonds. The original raiser bets 200 with 100 behind, and then the other player is tanking for a bit. As he's tanking, I'm trying to think about what the correct play would be if he decides to push. He has about $500 in front of him, and obviously my hand would be a lot stronger if there wasn't the 2 diamonds on board, but doesn't get to that point. He ends up folding, and just based on the pot odds, I just decided to push his remaining 100 in, and he calls, so we're going heads up to a run out. Turn brings a 6 of spades, giving me the backdoor flush draw. River brings pretty awful card in the Jack of diamonds, so not really beating too much here. He looks reluctant to turn over his hand, and I just decide to turn mine over, and he says I'm good. So not quite sure what he had, but happy to take it down. So it's about as good a start as I can possibly ask for here less than 30 minutes in. So here we look down at Ace, King, 8, 4, double suited in the small blind. There's an early position open to 15, 1 late position caller. I go ahead and call, and then the big blind, who was the opponent in the previous hand, he goes ahead and makes it 40. The other 2 players call, I call, so we're going 4 ways to a flop. Flop comes Jack 8, 5, rainbow. When I check, the big blind goes ahead and bets 150, and I go ahead and fold. Here we look down at Jack, Jack 8, 8, single suited in the big blind in a straddled pot. The button goes ahead and makes it 40, folds to me, I go ahead and call, and the straddler calls, so we're going 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes Ace 6, 2, rainbow. I check, the straddler checks, then the button goes ahead and pots it, and I fold. Here I look down at 9, 9, 8, 8, single suited in middle position. There's an early position limp. Then next player makes it 25. I call, and then 4 other players call. So we're going 6 ways to a flop. Flop comes Jack 6, 4 with 2 diamonds. And one of the early position players bets 130. When it gets back to me, I decide to fold. These medium double paired hands, it's definitely too good to fold pre-flop, but they're still a little tricky to play post-flop. You're really trying to either flop a set or some kind of a straight draw flop, like say like a 7-6 deuce. But here, 6 ways, can't really call with a 9 high flush draw, so I fold. Here I look down at Ace, Queen, 10, 9, single suited to the ace in the big blind in a straddled pot. Middle position player calls, I go ahead and call. Straddler makes it 40, the middle position player calls, and I call. So we're going 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes 7, 3, 2, rainbow. I check, straddler goes ahead and bets 50, middle position player folds, and I fold. So he takes down. Here I look down at Ace, 9, 9, 8, double suited in the small blind. There's a middle position open to 20, I call, and the big blind calls. So we're going 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes 7, 6, 4 with 2 diamonds. I check, big blind player bets 20, other player folds, and I go ahead and make the call. Heads up to a turn. Turn brings an ace of diamonds. I check. He goes ahead and bets $5. I go ahead and call, so we're going to a river. River brings a 4, and I don't really want to call too much of a bet here, so I decided to throw $5 in as a blocker bet, and he laughs and calls. We show our hand, and we're good. He actually shows 8-5 for the flop straight. Here I look down at ace, ace, 9-2, single suited to the ace in middle position. Folds to me, I raised to 20, only the blind calls, so we're going heads up to a flop. Flop comes king, queen, jack, rainbow. When he checks, I decide to check back. Turn brings a 9, and he goes ahead and bets 25, and I fold. Here I look down at ace, ace, 7-2, single suited to the 7 under the gun. And I go ahead and do the play that I did in a lot of my earlier videos, where I'm going to go ahead limp and then hope to back raise here. So I limp, player to my left makes it 20. There's one caller, then gets back to the big blind. He goes ahead and makes it 95. So back to me, I end up thinking for a little bit, probably about 25 to 30 seconds. Definitely longer than average, but I don't think an obscene amount of time. So I make it 335, and the player to my left, I guess he folded out of turn while this was going on. I didn't even notice, but it ends up coming back into play here in a second. So the player to my left, as I mentioned, folded out of turn, and then back to the 3-better. He tanks for a while, probably about a minute, minute and a half, but he does eventually make the call. He only has about 125 behind as well. Heads up to a flop of ace, king, 10 with 2 spades. When he checks to me, obviously only one thing for me to do. I go ahead and push him all in, and he quickly folds, so we end up taking it down. But I had mentioned that the player folding out of turn comes up here in a second, and as soon as the player to my right folded, he ended up calling out the player to my left for folding out of turn.
Well, you shouldn't fold out of turn, that spot. It was a pretty bad spot to fold out of turn.
I didn't fold out of turn.
You folded before he had acted. He was sitting there thinking about whether to re-raise, and you folded out of turn. Your hand was already in the middle of the table.
And I agree with him. It's definitely a big problem here in my game. I would say that's probably the most abused poker etiquette rule, however you want to refer to it. You know, commonly people will take a break after they play their hand on the button, but what they'll do is they'll look down at their hand, and under the gun doesn't even act, and they go ahead and just get up off the table, which obviously is an advantage for everyone else at the table, especially the player in the cutoff. He now knows that he has the best position at the table because the button folded. So definitely curious to know what you guys think. Curious to know what is the biggest poker etiquette rule that people abuse at your casino. Comment down below. Here I look down at ace, ace, king, 10, single suited to the ace in late position. There's an early position open at 20, one caller, and I just decided to call. The player on my left is the same kind of tilted loose player that's been there ever since that earlier aces hand. And I'm pretty deep at this point, so I don't really want to announce the strength of my hand unless I can make the raise pretty significantly large. So I decided to flat, hoping that the player to my left might decide to 3-bet like he's commonly been doing. But unfortunately, he just calls. So we're going 4 ways to a flop. Flop comes king, queen, 7, rainbow. The early position players check. I go ahead and check. And then the player to my left, he bets 35. Folds back to me, I go ahead and make the call, so heads up to a turn. Turn brings another queen, and I go ahead and check, and he checks back, so heads up to a river. River brings an 8, and I go ahead and try a blocker bet of $30, and he quickly raises me to 130. I ended up tanking for a little bit, but I ultimately make the call, and he turns over his hand, and he's going to take it down, so no good there. I ended up playing a little while longer after that ace's hand and ultimately decided to rack up. What's up, guys? Wayne back here with you. So I just finished up. Going into this session, I definitely wanted to implement some of the advice and recommendations you guys have given me. The 2 biggest of which were playing more aggressive and buying a little bit deeper. So bought in for 400 today, which, you know, maybe is not quite deep enough, but you know, a step up from my usual $300 buy-in. Started out kind of hot. I had the first big hand, which was the king, jack, jack, 10, flopped the set and the open-ended, ended up filling up on the turn, dodging his higher full house. And then shortly after, I had the ace, ace, queen, 8 double suited, ended up doubling up through him, not quite sure what he had. That player, he was definitely on tilt most of the session. After that particular hand, he went from seat 5 to seat 1 right on my left, so he was definitely straddling and just playing pretty much every hand. So hands that would normally have cost me maybe 20-25 to see a flop were costing me, you know, 35-40. So it went from about 1,300 at the beginning down to 1,000. But then I had the ace, ace, 7-2. Really happy how I played that hand, limping under the gun and then back four betting, which really ended up working out because he most likely had a double suited rundown. Only thing I can think he would fold $100 on a flop like that. Then at the end, I ended up paying off the same aforementioned tilted player with the aces. I called out his king queen, but ended up paying him off mostly because of his image. But overall, I think I played pretty well. I was in for 400, out for 1149, so win of 749. If you guys enjoyed it, please hit the like and subscribe button. If your viewing experience could have been better, please let me know how down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.